doing great. We had one mortality in each herd so far, and other than that, they're staying pretty close to their release sites. Of course, we did have 6 sheep that swam the river over to Oregon, but there's not a whole lot of wandering, and there have been a couple of sheep that have wandered away and then come back, so they're really doing well.
Once a week, research biologist Frances Cassier checks on the bighorn sheep of Hell's Canyon.
See, this is where the signal is received, so the antenna is pointing out this way, and it's kind of forming a cone like this.
More than 66 sheep are radio collared in Hell's Canyon.
This is the receiver. We've got 5 different or 6 different herds that we track.
Lift her up.
Frances will be searching high above for wild sheep that were brought in from British Columbia in December of 1997. So far, the transplant operation has been a huge success. Through the combined efforts of 3 states, 2 countries, and hundreds of individuals, 39 sheep were brought from Canada and released into Hell's Canyon. It was a venture funded and supported by the Foundation for North American Wild Sheep and part of a long-term plan to manage the bighorns in this area.
I think I see him. Right on that first ridge there. Yeah. Or that first rock outcropping.
Frances calls Hell's Canyon great bighorn habitat that's just crying for wild sheep. Some scientists hope that this new transplant will not only supplement the resident herd, but also provide new genetics that may help fight the battle against the bighorn's deadliest enemy, disease.
4 bedded, 6 feeding, and 1 by itself.
There's down here on the green, just below that rock bluff, there's a couple that are right in there.
At one time, thousands of sheep wandered the wilds of Hell's Canyon. But by the 1930s, bighorn sheep were extinct in the area due to a combination of overhunting and disease. Then, in the mid-70s, wild sheep were transplanted here from Canada, and they began to slowly repopulate the area. But the threat of disease never seemed to leave the herd. Outbreaks of pneumonia caused by the bacteria Pasteurella have haunted the Hell's Canyon wild sheep, nearly wiping them out in 1983, 1991, and again in 1995. 3 years of planning went into this latest transplant, and consequently, every time healthy sheep are sighted from the air, it's another small victory.
Is that them right down by the water there in that green spot?
Could be.
What I'm talking about there.
Yeah, I see it. In the trees.
It takes nearly 4 hours to fly the canyon and find each of the radio-collared sheep.
Go to the right. There they are, right on.
It's not a flight for the faint-hearted or the weak-bellied, for that matter. Pilot Doug Gadwa maneuvers the small plane into tight, nauseating turns, circling each herd until Frances has checked every sheep's radio signal and done her best to observe and record their activity.
They crossed the river last week.
Yep, there they are. Just 2 up there.
Looks like a ewe and a lamb.
After innumerable flights, it's obvious that this biologist and pilot have developed a strong team approach to finding the bighorns.
Definitely. Of course, he knows where the sheep are, and so that helps. And then you kind of know what each other are thinking even when you don't say anything. After you've worked together a little bit, you kind of have a partnership.
For Doug, it also means an opportunity to combine 2 passions.
Tying together the flying, this kind of flying, with the wildlife adventure, tracking sheep, tracking elk, is just kind of an internal thrill to me to put the 2 together. It really is.
The battery in the radio collars lasts anywhere from 3 to 5 years. As long as they're transmitting a signal, Frances will be flying. But what about the sheep that aren't collared in the canyon, or their offspring? And how will biologists keep count of the sheep once the collars are defunct?
Look on your side.
One of the goals of this project is to increase numbers, and we need to know how many we have to know whether we're doing that. So we know that when we fly, we don't see all the sheep. So what we're trying to do is develop a model so we can correct for the sheep that we don't see.
It's called a sightability model. Scientists know that certain factors increase the likelihood of seeing an animal from the air. For example, a sheep on the move is easier to spot than one bedded. An animal in shadow may be harder to see than a bighorn in bright sunlight and so forth. Another factor is terrain. In the early 1990s, the Bureau of Land Management and the Idaho Department of Fish and Game cooperated on a study to develop a sightability model for bighorns in the Owyhee Desert.
We put observers out on these various points out here, and then they have sheep in sight. We come flying through in a helicopter like we were doing a standard census, and we have the observers on the ground tell us whether or not we saw the sheep.
The study revealed that in the Owyhee Canyons, the helicopter crew detects 67% of the moving sheep, but only 33% of those standing still.
The idea is for me to watch the sheep so that when the helicopter comes by, we'll have an idea of how many they see or don't see of the ones that I am watching.
But on the flats above the rim, 91% of the moving sheep are counted from the air.
Once the model is developed, when you fly through country and do a census, you'd write down what kind of terrain the sheep were in when you flew by it. Then you could adjust for the proportion that you typically miss in that kind of terrain to come up with an actual number or an actual number estimate.
But Hell's Canyon is a whole different ballgame. In the Owyhee Desert, biologists are dealing with steep, shadowy canyons carved into immense flats. But here, in Hell's Canyon, it's sloping hillsides and mountain peaks. The vegetation also varies dramatically. Instead of the dense sagebrush cover of the Owyhee Desert, there's more grasses. So a whole new sightability model must be developed for the Hell's Canyon bighorn sheep. Once the sightability model is developed and implemented, biologists will be able to keep even better track of the wild sheep and hopefully record a thriving population in this native species flourishing in the magnificent expanse of Hell's Canyon.
Highlight on, click on Vivien with your mouse.
Coming up next, kids, computers, and wildlife, an educational connection.
Have they been hanging around the same area? Yeah, there's two of them. There should be two of them just above here. Vivien and another one.
Vivien? Try Mo, Curly, and Larry. No, it's not an old slapstick comedy, but some of the names given to bighorn sheep transplanted to Hell's Canyon from Canada.
Well, I really got a kick out of the names they gave the sheep, and the collars were really, really great to look at. And I also just like the idea that other people are following the sheep at the same time I am.
Somebody tell me.
Those other people are school kids from classes in Washington and Idaho who have adopted a bighorn sheep. Vivien is the adoptee of Don Jansen's 5th grade class at Cecil D. Andrus Elementary School in Meridian. The kids learned a bit about the democratic process when they chose her name.
By show of hands. Those would like the name Vivien, would you raise your hand, please?
And also had some fun decorating her radio collar. But Vivien's adoption has opened up a lot more than that.
Absolutely. I mean, we can do social studies, which is geography, technology, writing, science, math, reading. I think it's a great project for incorporating all that, as you say. Pressed enter.
Today, the class is learning a new skill, how to search for information on the internet.
Highlight on, click on Vivien with your mouse. The cursor, click on Vivien.
The collar they decorated last fall was placed around the neck of a female sheep captured in Canada. Vivien is now roaming free in Hell's Canyon, and this group of 5th graders, like good adoptive parents, are keeping track of her whereabouts.
So where is she recently found?
Right there.
She's down by the river, it looks like, isn't it?
Each time biologist Francis Cassier flies an aerial survey, Vivien's new location is entered on Fish and Game's website.
Well, it's fun to track Vivien to find out where she's going, because, like, I know exactly where she's going.
Kids are naturally interested in wildlife things and wild animals. That's a real natural curiosity for them. So when you can bring a program like this in, it really heightens their awareness. And it's fun to track something like this and be involved with an agency like Fish and Game Department.
In addition, the kids are learning how to use email.
What I want us to think about, too, is we now have internet and email, so we will be able to talk to the biologist who's out there on site or who's dealing with this project. And so what are some questions that we might ask her that would help us find out more about Vivien and as the project? What are some questions we could ask her? Megan?
How many sheep are in her group?
How many sheep are in her group? Why would you want to know that?
Because if we knew that, then we could, like, if we went out there, we could probably, like, find her just by counting the sheep in a group.
Don says that one of the most important things this project provides is an opportunity for the kids to relate to the real world, to make a connection between the subjects they're required to study and application of those studies to real life.
It's real important because these kids ask, why am I doing this? And we need to be able to tell them why. And so if you want to be a biologist, take science classes or whatever. So I think it's an excellent opportunity to make those connections.
These bamboo rods that I make will easily cast 75 feet. Most of the fish are 35 feet out from the bank.
Where are you going? In the water.
Good idea. I'm glad you know. When I was a kid, like all
I'll go down here.
guys my age, we all had bamboo rods to fish with. Bamboo rods are old cane poles, which I had both, and I just rather enjoyed them.
Bob Clark's traditional bamboo fly rod is a classic, handsomely designed and crafted. Its clean lines and graceful shape echo all that is beautiful and perfect about the sport of fly fishing. But it's no accident that this elegant rod is in the hands of Bob Clark. It's his own creation, a rod he built himself from a clumsy length of bamboo that once looked like this.
See it turning color?
This process, called flaming, colors the bamboo a rich golden brown. This is one step in the slow, precise craft of rod building.
Sometimes these strips will split off here just real fine, and other times we run into all kinds of hang-ups.
Each rod requires 18 of these strips, 6 for a butt section, and then, since Bob always includes an alternate rod tip, another 6 for each of the 2 tip sections.
But I like to space
The next
mine
step
out.
is to space out the nodes. These are the bumps that ring the outside of the bamboo shaft, or culm, as it's called. They're actually little dams that store water inside the plant and the strongest part of the culm. Bob likes to stagger these nodes in a spiral around the rod. Once this task is accomplished, he can cut the strips to a uniform length.
I usually make 3 to 5 rods a year.
The bamboo is imported from China, where the splitting and binding of bamboo fishing rods can be traced back to before the time of Christ. Now, Bob hasn't been doing it quite that long, but he has been at it for more than a decade.
Yeah, you just think up a system.
Bob marks each of the 6 strips so he can keep them in sequence and then moves on to the next step.
Now, this is I'm planing off the inside here now, which is what they call a pith. It's just, it just doesn't amount to anything. It just takes up space. And
After the first rough planing, Bob takes each piece and grinds off the nodes, smoothing the outside of the strip. As he files, the workshop fills with the pleasant, woody scent of the bamboo.
I like the smell of it. It just, to me, it just really smells sweet.
Now, the strip may be relatively smooth, but it's still a far cry from the straight and true shaft of a quality fly rod.
You can see they're quite crooked. There's a big wow right here in it. It bends out. These nodes are all crooked. They all have to be adjusted a little bit.
The answer to this predicament is heat. As the bamboo warms up, it relaxes, and Bob can slowly reshape it.
Takes a lot of eyeballing down the shaft to see if it's where to be bent at, how much you got to take.
Once each strip has been heated and manipulated straight and true, it's back to planing, thinning down the strips and sculpting each into a more precise shape.
Well, I enjoy it, yes. I like to work with my hands. I've worked with my hands all my life and made things with my hands. And this just fits right in with what I like to do.
As the strips begin to take shape, Bob switches to a homemade metal form that can be adjusted every 5 inches down its length. Now, as Bob begins planing, the strip will gradually take on a tapered shape. 6 of these must be planed down to equal size to form the tip section. It's a long, slow process, but the result is dramatic.
We got strip number 4 that we planed, and the one that hasn't been planed is strip number 5. They'll fit right together. You bet they will. They just go together just like they're made for each other.
When all 6 strips are finished and taped together, it looks like this.
Yeah, if you get one that's 10 thousandths off, one strip's 10 thousandths off, they just won't go back together properly. They just won't go together right.
Another homemade machine called a binder wraps the strips tightly together with string. This is in preparation for heat treatment, a process that tempers the rod, making it stiffer and harder.
I'll check the temperature.
It's difficult to determine which Bob takes more pride in, the handcrafted bamboo rods themselves or the marvelous contraptions he's designed to build the rods with, like this rod-shaped heat-treating oven.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
After he's unwrapped the string, Bob begins painting the inside with glue, being careful to remove any dust and dirt that may throw off his precise measurements. Then the rod goes back into the binder. This tightens it up, squeezing out all the excess glue.
There.
Then the rod is hung up to dry. Later, it's unwrapped and all the excess glue is scraped off, along with the top enamel layer of the bamboo. Step by step, the rod begins to take shape.
Feels like a fly rod.
The next step is to varnish the rod. And yes, it's another home-built contraption. A small portion of varnish is suspended in a bladder. Then a funky pulley system draws the rod through the varnish at an exact rate of 3 inches a minute, giving Bob a bit of time to explain handles and inserts.
Okay, this first one back here is a bird's eye maple reel seat insert with the screwable silver fittings on it. And this one is made out of a deer horn with the Struble silver fittings on it. This deer horn over here. This is a cork insert that's used on lightweight rods, if I'm trying to make a light one. This one here is one that I'm building. It's a myrtle wood insert.
It takes 13 of these cork rings to form a handle that is eventually contoured into a grip.
I prefer to use the cork rings.
Then, finally, there's the wrapping, winding the fine, colorful silk threads that attach the guides and hook keeper to the rod.
Now this is an underwrap that I'm putting here that goes, the hook keeper sets down on.
Bob estimates that he spends in excess of 60 hours building one rod. The result is remarkable, from this to this. A distinctive, classic bamboo fly rod, beautiful to behold, and handcrafted with pride and precision. What could be finer?
You can't cast as far with bamboo, but it presents a fly a lot better. Kind of like that, if you notice that. Out here today, I don't think it'd make much difference whether you used graphite or bamboo. I couldn't get fish with either one, I don't believe.
We've counted 8 so far.
Coming up next, bighorns, some of the best wildlife watching around.
Well, we got 1 ram and 3 ewes.
Oh yeah, I think sheep are an animal that just about everybody can appreciate. Well, I think one reason is that they're easy to see. And I don't know, one of my theories is sheep are really visual animals. They can see much better than we can. And when you watch a sheep, the sheep's usually watching you. And so you kind of make a connection with the animal.
Because you got 3 on the top, 1 down low, and then you got the 2 in the canyon right there now that are coming up.
Ross and Sandra Hill have spent their entire afternoon watching wildlife along the Snake River. Today, their list of discoveries includes a blue heron, a couple of mule deer, and a coyote, and now this small herd of bighorn sheep. Francis believes another part of the fascination is the tough, craggy country the wild sheep call home.
Also, they don't really seem afraid. They just will watch you while you're watching them. So it's a little different than elk and deer. Yeah, I can spend hours watching sheep. They're really entertaining.